Right, welcome everybody for one more session. Let us look into this particular session. In this particular session, we'll be basically learning about a service called as CloudFront. We will look into a couple of demos on CloudFront and we'll basically understand about pricing. All right, let me shift to my whiteboard to understand what is CloudFront. Now, AWS CloudFront is basically a web service. Okay, it's a web service. Basically it is used to speed up the distribution of your static and dynamic web content with the files such as which has extension of .html, .css files or .js files. All right, for your users it could be images as well. So to provide users a faster delivery of your website static content, we can use CloudFront. Okay, let us understand a use case. Now let's say I have created a S3 bucket. Okay, now this S3 bucket is there in a Mumbai region. Okay, and we have hosted a website, static website on this Mumbai region. Now let's say for this website I have users in India. Okay, let's say I have users in uh, India. Okay, these are users. Let's say they can access the website from this S3 bucket because this website is hosted in a S3 bucket which is there in Mumbai region. Performance would be good. That means latency would be less. Now let's say there are users in Australia, there are users in Europe. Okay, and let's say there are users in US who wants to access this particular website. Okay, now if these users are trying to access this website which is hosted in this S3 bucket, now will they will also have the same latency? The latency for these users in US, Australia and Europe, okay, if these users are trying to access this website, the latency would be high. Why the latency would be high? Because this website is hosted in Mumbai region. All the users who are near to the region, the latency will be less. For other users, the latency will be higher. That means the performance would be slow. But my use case is that users, if they are located anywhere across the globe, I want the latency should be less. That means performance should be same. How can we achieve this? We can achieve this on AWS by using a service called as CloudFront. That is the use of AWS service called as CloudFront. Now we can call a CDN simply as a CloudFront simply as CDN, which is called as Content Delivery Network. Okay, we can call CloudFront as a content delivery network. With the help of CloudFront, what happens? It increase the read performance. Okay, this is not for write performance. This is basically for a read performance. So how it is achieved? It is achieved with the help of a concept called as edge locations. Okay, we'll understand in a bit what are edge locations. But there are around 216 edge locations across the world. Okay, so a CloudFront is a CDN service which is called as Content Delivery Network. With the help of CloudFront, it improves the read performance. Now let us try and understand what are edge locations. Okay. Now, before that, we know AWS infrastructure is located in multiple regions, right? Okay. There are regions in US, regions in Europe, regions in Asia. Now, what will be there inside a region? Inside region, there will be availability zones. Now, inside availability zones, there are data centers. Okay. This is basically the infrastructure hierarchy of AWS cloud. There are data centers, multiple data centers, group of data centers, we can call it as availability zones, and group of availability zones, we can call it as a region. And there are multiple regions in AWS. Now then, what is this edge locations and where are these edge locations are located? These edge locations are there across the world. Okay, these edge locations are located across the world, and these edge locations, some of them are maybe AWS owned or AWS vendors. Now, throughout the world, AWS has multiple vendors who provide edge services to AWS. Now, let us look into the AWS map, which shows the AWS regions and edge locations. Now, if you go here, you see the global infrastructure. You see, these are all the locations where AWS regions are there. AWS regions are distributed across the world. Now, if I look into the edge locations, you see, global edge network. This is AWS global edge network. Okay, if you look into the AWS edge network, these are there in throughout the world. Okay, they're there in multiple locations. Now, the edge locations are there in North America, regional edge locations, they're there in Asia, Australia, etc. Okay, they're there in multiple locations. In some of the locations, there are multiple edge locations as well. Okay, so now we understood that there are AWS edge locations across the world. Now, if there are edge locations, how it is going to improve the read performance? Let us look into that. Now, let's take the same example. Let's say I have an S3 and I have hosted a website. Okay. Now, let's say this is there in Mumbai region. Now, let's say I have pushed this website into a CloudFront network. Okay. Now, if I push this website into a CloudFront network, okay, let me put this in this manner. Let's say I have pushed this into CloudFront. Now, what happens? Let's say there's a user or a client who is trying to access this website. Now, because I have pushed this into a CloudFront network, what happens is that there is, let's consider, there is something called as a, now we know that there are a lot of edge locations, right? Let's say in India, there is one edge location. Now, when the user is trying to access, it will send the request to the edge location, whichever is the nearest to this user. Now, if the website content is there in this, it will directly show that, or else this particular files, website files will be loaded here. Index.html, your CSS files or .js files, whatever the files they are, they will load here and then the user will be able to see the website on his device. Okay. Now let's consider if there is a user in Europe. Okay. Now, because we are enabling CloudFront for this, now in Europe also there is, we saw that in Europe also there is some edge locations, right? Let's say this is a edge location in Europe. Now what happens? Same thing, the website content will also be cached. The website content is cached in wedge location which is there in Europe. That means the index.html file, the CSX files, JS files, all are there in this Europe edge location. Okay, and let's say there is a end user in US location. Now in US also I have a edge location. Now all the website data is cached here also. Now index.html file, CSS file, or JS file, I'm just giving example. All the files is cached in all the edge locations. Now the user, if he's trying to access the website, the request will not come to the S3 bucket. He will directly access from his a local edge location. Similarly, this user will access the data from his local edge location. Users in Europe will access the data from their local edge location, so that the performance for every user throughout the world will be good. That means latency will be less for all the users. That is the use of edge locations. Now here I just gave an example of S3, but we can host a website on a EC2 instance as well. Okay, or else let's say we have multiple EC2 instances and we created a load balancer. Okay, we can configure this load balancer also to a CloudFront distribution. Now what happens? Whatever data this load balancer has to serve, that will be cached across multiple edge locations which are spread across multiple regions across the world. Okay, now if I want to put this EC2 instance into a CloudFront distribution, or else let's say this S3, I want to put that on a CloudFront distribution. Now this we call it as origin. That means where the actual files are there, that is called as origin. Now whatever files which are there in the origin will be pushed into the edge locations. So basically what is the use of CloudFront? CloudFront is used for the distribution of your static and dynamic web content to all the edge locations, so that the performance of your application would be good throughout globe. All right, so now let us look into a simple hands-on exercise how to do this. Now to do this hands-on exercise, first I will create first we will create one S3 bucket. Okay, and we will enable static website hosting. Okay, and we will put some code files, HTML website files, and then we will create a CloudFront distribution. Okay, and we will add the S3 bucket to the origin, and we will see whether the website is added to the CloudFront or not. Okay, these are the steps that we are going to do as part of this particular exercise. Now let me switch to my AWS console. Now I am on my AWS console. First of all, let me go to S3 buckets. Select this option called as S3. Okay, let me create a bucket. Select option create bucket. I'll give the name of the bucket as demo CloudFront website. Okay, it should be globally unique. I'm giving this as a bucket name. And because it is a website that I'm hosting, this should have a public access. All right, I acknowledge, I know that this is going to be public. All right, rest all I will leave it as default and select option called as create bucket. Okay, now if you see, The bucket is created. You see, demo CF website is the bucket name. Let me open this and let me put my HTML file in it. Select option upload, add files. All right. I have one simple demo.html file. Let me copy that, open. Right now, select option upload. So if you want to grant public access here, we can also give that. But anyways, this is a public. Let me go to upload. Bucket we have given public access anyways. Now select option close. Let me go to the properties here. Okay, and you see the static website hosting is disabled. Select option edit. Select option enable. Now what is my static website? What is the file it has to take? It has to take a file called as demo.html. That is the name that I have given, and that is what we have uploaded into the bucket. Select option save changes. Now let me go to the objects and properties again. Now let's see, I must be getting a URL. Let's see this URL whether the website is up or not. Let me copy this and paste it here. Enter. Okay, so we have not given a public access for that particular file. Let us do that. Go to permissions. Edit. Okay, we have given public access for this, but for the file we have not given. Go to demo.html. Go to permissions. You see, public access is not there for this particular file. Okay, go here, enable the ACLs. Okay, I acknowledge and save changes. Now go to, let me go to that bucket again. Go to this file, go to permissions, edit. Okay, now I want to give read access to everyone. All right, I agree, I understand that I'm giving permissions, and then save. Now let me go to this file, enter. You see, this is what a website is up. All right, now let me put this website in a CloudFront distribution. For that, let me go to CloudFront. Let me go to CloudFront. This is a service. You see, it is called as Global Content Delivery Network. Okay, so basically this will enable your service in every region. So your website content would be there in every region, so that it would be local for those users. Okay, you see there's an option called as create distribution. Select this option, create distribution. Okay, now you see origin domain. That means where is your origin? Select this. Now my origin domain is this, which is demo CF website. This is the one. Okay, let me copy this, or else you can also see that here. You see here, it is there here. Now if we have connected this route 53, we can use that directly here. Okay, as a origin. Okay, now this is the name. Whether this should have public access or not, I want this to be public. Okay, enable origin shield. I don't want to do that as of now. Now whether it should be accessed by only HTTP protocol or HTTPS protocol, it should allow get methods or what methods. Okay, restrict viewer access. I don't want to restrict any viewer access as of now. Okay, do you want to cache? Obviously I want to cache this, then only uh, the performance or latency would be slow. And then you see viewer request function type logs or any edge. As of now, let us leave it to default. Now you see here, there is a service on AWS called as a WAF. WAF means a web application firewall. That means we can also filter the traffic that comes to this particular application. It is asking, do you want to enable it? No, I don't want to enable it. If you select an option called as enable security protections, you can also enable that. Okay. As of now, I don't want to enable that, but it's simply this is the option that you need to check. There is no other option. And this particular website that you're pushing to CloudFront, right? Now it should be pushed to all the edge locations across the world, or you can only push to the North America and Europe edge locations. Or else, if your all your clients are there in Europe and Asia, you want to push to all the edge locations which is there in this region only. Okay, but if you want best performance, use all edge locations. That means if you have your end users across the world, then you want to cache your application in all the edge locations, then you can choose use all edge locations. Okay, if I want to add a CNAME, we can add a CNAME to this. And then if your application is a HTTPS application, then you might have to add a certificate. Okay, now this is a place where you can add your certificates. All right, rest all you can leave it to defaults and select option called as create distribution. Okay, this is as simple as it is. Now the distribution is created for you. Now you can see here in general the distribution name, you can see the all the options that we have selected. Okay, and origins, this is the origin name, this is the origin domain, origin type is S3. Okay, what are the behaviors? Okay, you can also see error pages if there are any geographic restrictions. There is no geographic restrictions, right? Because we have selected all the regions. Any invalidations. Okay, now if you see, what happens is that this website now it is not served from S3 bucket, but it is served from a wedge location. You see the performance is also super fast. Okay, because it is there in a edge location. That is what is a CloudFront is. Now let's say create another distribution. Now if I go into origins, you see there is also elastic load balancers, there's also API gateways, there's also media package counters. That means you can also not only connect S3 buckets, you can also connect load balancers, API gateways, all other thing also as origins. As of now, I just have S3 bucket. That is the reason that is highlighted. If there is an elastic load balancer, this will also be highlighted, and we can choose a elastic load balancer or a API gate. And then the configuration would remain the same. Instead of S3 bucket, the origin would be a load balancer, and whatever EC2 instances that are connected behind the load balancer, the data from that would be cached into the edge locations. All right, that is basically CloudFront for you. And let us discuss about the pricing, how the pricing will happen in CloudFront. Now if you see, the status is enabled and it is still deployed. Okay, now let us discuss a little bit about the pricing of CloudFront. Now there will be three types of charges. First of all, storing the data on S3 bucket, the normal charges. The second thing is that charge for serving objects from the edge locations. That means whenever a user requests and whenever CloudFront responds with one objects, right, that there will be a charge, and the charge will include data transfer for WebSocket data to serve the client. And there is another charge called as charge for submitting data. Okay, so when CloudFront when you incur charges when users transfer data to your origin or to a edge location, that might be like deleting, patching, posting, put requests, all those will also be charged. So there are three kinds of charges for the CloudFront. All right, so that's all about CloudFront. See you guys in the next session. Take care.